Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. Shall we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today? Where, well, first things first. Ooh, the new Animal Crossing Fawnhallow is finally out. It took me 100 days or so, but it's finally here. But you know, whatever. Do I have much of an excuse? Not really. It just got like pushed back and back. You know, life gets busy. Well, I'm gonna kind of say it during the thumbnail art time lapse itself. So, apologise, but also, you know, so be it. I don't mean that in like such a dismissive way, I suppose. It's just more like it's sort of just like I definitely should have got it like done ages ago. But you know, sometimes I guess it's kind of hard sometimes to find both the diligence and the motivation for it. Anyway, good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 10:46 p.m. on Saturday, July 6th, 2024. Especially when all the other thumbnail arts take like 2 hours, and this one takes like, I think this one took 14 hours or something for me to draw, which surprisingly was longer than the camping one, which took me like 11 or something hours, which definitely surprised me. I guess because this one had more complex like line art and stylings or something. I don't know. To be perfectly honest. Anyway, so hope you like it, and if you don't, then you can wait till next year, I suppose, and see if you like that one instead. But if you can probably tell by today's title, I'm not going to talk about thumbnail art. I was originally going to do it, but then I was like, okay, you know, just 2 things about thumbnail art in a row is probably a bit excessive. But today I went to go see Inside Out 2 with some friends. We also went to go like eat some food, which I will be talking about probably in future episodes. But today I want to talk about Inside Out 2, what is fresh on my mind. As always, this is not like a structured review, this is just like a what's it called? Just like I'm just like thinking randomly, and whatever I say. I warn you before I get into mild spoilers, and I'll warn you before I get into heavy spoilers, I suppose. Up to you to decide what classifies as what. But on the whole, I would say I enjoyed it. Did I enjoy it more than Inside Out 1? I think I enjoyed it basically the same as Inside Out 1. This movie is like, I don't know how to best describe it, except for it basically feels like, I mean, it's obviously a sequel. It's going to sound stupid, but it's like, oh, like if the first movie ran on for like another hour and a half, this is probably what that second part of the movie would be like, I'd assume. It's a movie which, to its credit, is a very natural continuation, a like follow-up movie. I mean, Inside Out 1, I think, is honestly a great movie, to be honest, and it's probably my favorite. Is it my favorite Pixar movie? I don't know. What is pretty good. It's one of my favorite Pixar movies. It's definitely like up there. And it's one of the movies where, you know, some movies I'm just like, oh, I'm not really sure if I can see a sequel for this. Inside Out 1 is one where you could absolutely see a sequel for it. I mean, it's all about sort of reflecting like emotions and, you know, dealing with them, I suppose. And in Riley's case, you know, she's still a child, so it's like a very natural one to be like, oh, how do you make a sequel out of this? More emotions, older Riley. Riley being a main character if you haven't seen it. And that's basically what it does. And it feels like, how do I put it? It sort of feels like it hits similar story beats, not similar story, but similar structural story beats to the first one, sort of. But does it do it better or worse? I think it does it like about the same. But so it's like some things it does well, but some things I'm like hit or miss. But I still think it does it pretty well in general, as like a sort of like high level overview. Like I guess like one of the new characters, the way it resolves, I think, is quite nicely. I think the pacing's a little bit weirder than the first one. When I was watching it, I thought I definitely, I'll self-admit, I thought the pacing was too fast. That like some of these more like heavy hitting moments didn't really have time to sort of like lay out. It just sort of like, oh, it happened and then it just gets resolved. But looking at it like as a whole, I now see that it's probably not like the pacing was too fast. It's more like the pacing, I would describe it as more snappy compared to the first one. Yeah, again, I haven't watched the first one for like almost a decade, so the beats maybe don't quite line up in my head. But the second one has much more sort of snappy pacing, where it's just like, oh, it doesn't linger like too long on anything, basically. It sort of like goes to the next thing. Sometimes to its benefit, sometimes I think to its deficit. Its ending, I think, is actually just fantastic. Like the entire ending sequence is great. One of the new characters is fantastic, and the rest of the new characters are pretty good as well, you know. So now we'll start getting in, I think, into sort of mild spoiler territory. So be warned if you want to go completely unspoiled into Inside Out 2. So it's interesting because like Inside Out 2 very clearly carries over from Inside Out 1, which is why it's such like a good sequel. But it doesn't take away, it doesn't like retcon too much of Inside Out 1, and then I put like an asterisk next to that. Like Joy still has like her character development. She understands and appreciates all emotions and understands all emotions have a use, and now like the entire thing is sort of like operating as a team, which is cool because fear, disgust, and anger get a bit more of a bigger role in this one. Sadness takes a little bit of a step back because I mean she had so much like I suppose like screen time in the first one. So this time like whatever the premise is now, like all operating together as a team, and instead of Joy just like dominating all emotions or whatever, and like she's turning every moment into a happy one, she's now sort of like mellowed out a bit and she's got all these emotions, but then they as a team sort of be like, oh yeah, let's get rid of like these bad memories which sort of like weigh heavy on her mind and send them to like the back of her subconscious, which I feel like has a, you know, that's why I say it has like the same sort of structural story beats. It's like instead of like Joy now like monopolizing over this entire thing, it's more like the team sort of like again doing this thing very disruptive to her personality. I suppose in the first one it's more about sort of like hiding the emotions, the true emotions, while this one is sort of more like just forgetting about the bad moments. But then they they introduce this concept of her belief system, which is kind of like the core memory system. Like I'm gonna be honest, it's basically like the same sort of idea, where some of these like memories are super special, but instead of making a memory island, they make a core belief, which is like a tenet of her personality. Which is honestly it's a very sweet thing. You can see there's like a whole mix of different emotions in there, and you know she strums one, and it's like, oh, I'm a good person, like I'm a kind person. They're all like very affirmative things of like who Riley is. Because they're all made up of these good memories. And then they introduce the new emotions. I will say Anxiety is probably my favourite character. She, I suppose, like mildish spoilers, you find out very early on, but she's basically an antagonist in this movie. But she's a very likeable antagonist, in my opinion. She's an antagonist where you sort of see her side, is how I describe it. Then you get Envy, who is a fun-ish as a character. She kind of feels like more just to be like the sideman to Anxiety, just like someone to like bounce off of, because the other two characters introduced are very much not characters which you can like bounce dialogue off of and like have interesting conversations that way. She's not really a villain either. I guess she's like she's kind of like much more neutral throughout the entire thing. I guess she's kind of like a secondary antagonist, but not like, I wouldn't say like super so. Embarrassment is just kind of there to be like a redeemed antagonist. I guess that's kind of like the role he fulfills, but you know, he's kind of like a comedic character, I suppose. And Ennui is like, she's just straight up basically the comedic character. Same with like Nostalgia, who is straight up just like a throwaway gag. But these new emotions come in, and my initial thought was like, why does she like? It's obviously a natural place to expand out inside the Inside Out universe, but like, does she really need, like, how you got to do new emotions right, because you have these 5 core emotions there, you got to make sure there's no overlap. And my initial thing was like, Anxiety has like so much overlap with fear, but then like I do a fair reason of justifying it, of like fear is like a sort of like natural like danger sense initially and like, well, practically, and Anxiety is more like the sort of preparation running through these scenarios in your head, which I'm like, okay, like I'm willing to give it a pass, I suppose. So yeah, like I feel like new emotions is definitely like the natural way to expand into it. And let's take a quick detour here, where Inside Out and I think Inside Out 2 as well are also stories which are very hard carried, I think, by their world building as well. It's such a fun world to imagine, I suppose, like all these sort of things. Like, okay, now I'm going to say heavy spoiler warning, and all bets are off. Anything in the movie could be spoiled, but like things like with sarcasm, like when it first appeared I was like, what? And then like we said the sarcasm, and I was like, okay, that's clever, you got me there. Pixar. Like Brainstorm was like really fun sort of gag. Like all of these sort of things which you see, stream of consciousness, that's another good one. The train of thought in the first one are really like fun ideas. Like it must be so fun to come up with this world of its ideas. And it's one which like really benefits the story, because like if you take all that stuff away, I suppose, and it's still like a fine story, but like the world that surrounds them sort of like hides over the details of like how the plot pacing, in my opinion, is very sort of like story, like here, you know. it doesn't have as natural a flow as I would like necessarily, but I also need to recognize that I'm very much someone who likes a very sort of slow burn of a story, which is not, the average person. Anyway, sorry, yes. So I will say this is another thing, like, why I thought, like, the story just, like, escalated so immediately, is that anxiety is basically like, okay, I really wanted to work with you, but I'm sorry, this isn't going to work out. And then, like, she gets them all captured and sends them off basically somewhere, and I was just like, okay, that just, like, escalated immediately. I thought there'd be, like, some times where we're, like, trying to figure it out and it just, like, escalates. It was like an underlying tension, but nope, just straight in there, anxiety sends him away. And then it's sort of like, some of the story beats, like, meander, I suppose, a little bit. I will say in this movie, the overarching narrative of Riley's story is one which I think is focused much more heavily on, kind of. Like, in Inside Out one, like, obviously a large focus is on the emotions of joy and sadness. But, like, obviously it rounds off with, like, Riley's story, which is something you connect to. But in this one, Riley's story is sort of, like, peppered throughout. It feels like much more cohesively with it. It's rather than in Inside Out, where it feels like emotions are dictating Riley's life. It's more like Riley is dictating her own life, and the emotions are sort of, like, representing what is happening internally. At least that's how I take it. I know a lot of people say that Inside Out has, like, a lot of, like, plot holes or whatever, like, logical inconsistencies, but to me, I feel like because it's just, like, to me, these emotions are meant to be, like, representative, like, metaphorically representative. It doesn't need to be, like, logically consistent. It is literally an imagined world. But your mileage may vary when it comes to that. But this is, like, where you start seeing anxiety, I think, as a very interesting villain, or antagonist. She's not a villain, she's an antagonist, because she opposes a protagonist, Joy in this case, where, like, all of these new emotions, they come in at appropriate times, which, sells the idea of the first one, the first Inside Out as well, is, like, each of these emotions has a place. But the themes that are explored in the second one, which is kind of explored in the first one, which is why it sort of, like, carries the same structural beats, is because this idea of, like, each emotion has its place, but left unchecked, any emotion can really ruin anything. And which is basically, like, what Joy learned in the first one, which is more interesting, I think, from the first one's perspective, in a sense, because sadness, anger, disgust, and fear, I think, are all emotions which people very rarely, like, in excess, yeah, obviously this would ruin someone's life. And Joy, in a sense, is one which is a bit harder for, I don't think it's as immediately obvious, but in the facade, it's like, as a fake facade, then yes, Joy is something which can be very detrimental as well. And it's a lesson that Joy learns, and it's basically, the second movie is Joy basically realizing that this lesson is something she needs to teach to anxiety as well, and also accept for herself, like, in a different way, and, like, accept not just in, like, in her emotional control, but also, like, the control of Riley herself. But you see anxiety as a very capable, like, person. She's clearly got Riley's best interests in mind. Like, when Riley sort of, like, messes around, goofs off, like, on Joy's mistake, anxiety comes forward and, like, helps, like, mend a bridge between her and, I forgot what the leader of the Nighthawks, the captain of the Nighthawks, is called. Yeah, so, like, it's pretty cool. I mean, like, anxiety steps up again, and, like, it works out, and it's sort of just like, okay, as anxiety, like, sends away, you're like, that's, like, pretty extreme. Obviously she's an antagonist, but you see it, like, her working, and you're like, okay, like, I can, sometimes I, like, think this is a bit much, but I can see it's working. She's capable, like, she's clearly got things in mind, but as anxiety works, anxiety is a very tense emotion in the first place. Anxiety starts, like, putting her own memories into the, like, core foundation of who Riley is. A little detail I love on that is, like, these beliefs, that's what they're called, are, like, strings which you pluck, and they're just, like, a lot of them are sort of loosely draping into the water and that sort of thing, but anxiety ones are so tense and taut, they, like, shoot up like a lightning bolt, and they're, like, high strung, because that's what anxiety is. It's like and anxiety is like building a house of cards which is eventually going to fall. And, like, when it collapses, anxiety just goes, I knew that was going to happen, I told you so. It's all just, like, sort of built in this misplaced paranoia almost. So it was, like, I love the detail of, like, her strings being, like, so high strung, essentially. But anxiety shows herself to be very capable. She is a planner. She's not, like, a disordered mess or anything. She's looking through these scenarios and being like, yes, this is what's going to happen, we're going to prevent it, which is why I feel she's, like, really engaging, and which is why I kind of, like, envy needs to be there as a character, because it gives it, like, something fun to bounce off of. She feels like a very capable leader, I suppose, in a sense, but also, like, her being unchecked is, like, almost like a worse version, I suppose, of Joy being unchecked. So yeah, but they go their story to like save the thing. Like sadness goes back to the other emotions go back to get like Riley's core sense of self or something again. And then sadness goes back to the base. Sadness doesn't really do all that much, I'm gonna be perfectly honest, which is fine. And she kind of takes a step back because she had like a limelight to herself, and the others go on adventure. Now there's some like story beats here. Like most of it is just kind of exploring a mind. It's like two story beats, like exploring of a mind, and then like what Riley's like actual life is going on. And the Riley part I think was actually quite interesting. You know, it's a teenager going through his emotions, and everyone looks at it and is like, oh my god, that awkwardness as a teenager. Yes, there's embarrassment. Everyone's felt it at some point, unless you're shameless, in which case fair enough. The journey for the other emotions I feel is a bit more iffy, I suppose. Like it's nice to see these cool things. As I say, sarcasm, very clever. Brainstorm, really fun. But it's also just like very sort of snappy with the beats. So like some of like hard hitting emotional parts, like in the midpoint, feel like they don't hit as hard because they sort of feel like they should be bubbling up more often or something. I mean, it's not they come out of nowhere, you know it's happening, I suppose, but it just feels a bit too snappy in its execution, in my opinion. Like when Joy basically just like lashes out and gets really angry and then gets really sad, and you might be like, it's kind of weird about the emotions of feeling other emotions, and to me I'm just like, okay, these emotions are just kind of representative. They're not like literally the embodiment of these emotions, and they're not like literally purely that emotion in my mind. They're just sort of like the embodiment of it. So like as it gets swayed by different things, you can have like happiness and anger, of course, like meld together. Like what does that angry happiness look like? What does a sad happiness look like? That sort of thing, you know. And also because it kind of has to, because to be honest, if these characters that were literally only their emotion, they would be such boring characters, in my opinion. Or such one-note characters. But in that case, it would make more sense, I think, for Riley to be like the spotlight character, and then the emotions are just sort of like supporting cast, in my mind. Because otherwise I feel like it would be harder to like really engage with the characters if they were one note and couldn't have like any other expressions or emotions. Anyway, so Joy lashes out, and then it sort of like gets resolved. They like team up, and like we're like, oh yeah, let's do this, which I'm like, okay, that happened like really quickly, but sure, why not. But it happens again like I suppose a few times, like before they almost come back and then Joy becomes really sad, and then they're like, let's do this. But I just want to say, like, the final part, I suppose, like the lead up for Riley, like you watch Riley like do these things, you're like, oh no, Riley, don't do that. But you see these sort of mistakes because I think they're very relatable mistakes, things which people do, you know, like trying to be cool, trying to fit in, doing something like awkward in a sense of trying to fit in, and like it's not working out. And you really just sort of empathize with Riley in a sense, because she's like a 13-year-old trying to fit in with like seniors or juniors or something in high school who are like 17, 18ish or something, and she's just like trying her best to act cool, but she's still like a goofy, like just turned teenager. So yeah, it's really fun to actually, I suppose, watch Riley's own development and like her emotions, and seeing anxiety like slowly build up. Like anxiety like in small amounts can be good to like be wary of things, but when anxiety takes full control, you can see that the entire structure is built on like this really high strung conditional emotion. One thing I absolutely adore is the fact that all of anxiety's core beliefs when they get made are all conditionals. They're like, instead of the previous ones are like, I'm a good person, I'm helpful, I'm fun, or whatever, anxiety's ones are all conditionals. They're like, I need to be good, I need to be good so the team will accept me. I need to have a team accept me because otherwise I'll be lonely, or something like that. And then finally, like when they all coalesce together, where all anxiety puts all of her emotions into a belief system, they combine together in a resolution that it will never be enough. That's the only like solid belief which can come from this stacking anxiety. And I absolutely love the way they did like anxiety sort of like the climax, I suppose, or like the breakdown part, when she starts getting frazzled during the final thing. She's just like, okay, we have to get these 3 goals, and then like you see Riley just get like more and more basically unhinged, like more and more panic, being like, I have to do this, everything is riding on it, and like how the amount of pressure building up. And I feel like it was portrayed really well. I know, like, and then when she starts doing the storm thing, I just went like, oh no, anxiety. And then like when it all comes crashing down when she has the penalty, and then like Riley straight up has like an anxiety attack. And it was beautifully portrayed, I think, when Joy goes into the tornado, and anxiety, it's like she's basically like scuttering around like crazy, like, like how your mind races at like 1,000,000 miles per hour, but she herself is also just visibly just kind of like frozen, attached to the console, just like your mind racing like crazy, but you just can't do anything. That's just it. and how she's not actually there because she's like actually done, basically like speeding around the console like at 1,000,000 mph. And I was like, that's when I saw that, I was like, that is a brilliant, like, give a raise to whoever came up with that like way of representing it. That's fantastic. What a clear way to communicate that sort of feeling, I suppose, just through like imagery and story. And it's just like a really heartfelt moment, I suppose, when Anxiety, you know, as I say, she's building up this house of cards and it's coming crashing down in front of her, and you can't help but feel like, this is so sad, I suppose, for Anxiety. It's like heart-wrenching, I suppose. But then, you know, they basically rip out the old identity of Riley and then allow the bad memories, I suppose, the awkward ones, the ones that she'd rather forget, to also form beliefs and to be part of the new Riley, who understands both her strengths and weaknesses. And then they have like a really like touching moment where Riley sort of like reconnects with her friends who she's been like I mean, the whole thing sparked about like the fact her friends are not going to high school, and then she had like all this anxiety based off of what could happen from that. Yeah, and then she has like a really touching like moment of reunion with her friends where like I absolutely love a shot because it's so small, like it's such a short clip, but it conveys the story just like really well at that point where Riley goes to the penalty box and she's basically having a breakdown, and then like her other friend, who she literally just tackled like really aggressively, that's how she got sent into the box in the first place, like is just skating along and like looking reasonably determined, looks over to like her old friend Riley, and just like her face like drops, just like, what's going on? Like this immediate identification of something's wrong, but you can see all the stress and pressure getting to Riley. And I was like, this is like a very engaging way, I suppose, to do it. Like I was far more invested in Riley's story this time than I was in Inside Out 1. And then they have like a touching sort of reunion, they like forgive themselves, which kind of like is a bit fast, but it's also the sense like, again, it only happened over 3 days. I don't think like Riley and her friends really fell out. It's more like her friends is just sort of like, what is going on with you, Riley? So of course I would be reasonably quick to forgive in my mind. And then they do this beautiful thing. Like apparently animated cartoons are having a field day with displaying panic attacks, where Riley basically engages with her 5 senses to sort of like calm herself down from a panic attack. Like she like listens to the sounds of, I can't really remember what, she takes a like deep breath to smell the smells, and then like she pushes her hand on like a wooden bench and like that rustle, that feel, like to engage her senses. It's something you're meant to do in a panic attack. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is how I hear it, where you if you're having a panic attack, you name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can touch, 1 thing you can taste, something like that, to calm her down. And then like I love how in like, Anxiety's one, like everything is just going at like super fast, 1,000,000 miles per hour, and then when she like finally wants joy, everything is just so slow motion, that she feels that sort of bliss. She really like engages with it at a time. So yeah, those are like the overarching things. I'm like, that's like honestly a very cohesive story, and I think it was very well written, actually, to be honest, and well executed. The other thing where just like during a moment I was like, this feels a bit fast paced. In retrospect, it's probably just like quite snappy. But there's also a lot of like other fun moments, I suppose, which like don't tie into this overarching story, like when they become suppressed emotions, and then there's that like Dora the Explorer parody, Bloofy. Was really fun. Like all those characters are really fun because they're like animated differently. You had like the base emotions with their fun like Pixar style emotions, and Bloofy has like this like kids cartoon style. He's like always facing the audience, and like all these like low animations. I also love that his walk animation is just like a walk cycle, but does not at all line up like with the distance he's moving in real life. It was so good. And then like they have like this 3D like Final Fantasy-esque character from like the PS2 era or something, character who like has all these like really janky looking motions. He's got like aliasing or like these hard edges on the character as well, and he's so dramatic. I absolutely adored that. The entire, I suppose, movie is awash with colour and colour imagery as well. You know, certainly not lost on me that the fact that the hockey team that Riley is playing for is bathed in orange, the colour of anxiety as well, to sort of like reflect this. Of course, the sun at the end of yellowness that represent the joy. Amazing line from Joy with just being like, as she get, like, no, 2 lines. One from anxiety being like she needs more complex emotions as she's getting older, and 2 being like there's no room for like joy when you experience like less joy as an adult. And I was like, whoa, Jesus, it's quite a hard line. What else did I want to say, which I thought was cool? I'm not really sure. I guess it was kind of cool to see disgust, fear, and anger also take a larger role as well in this. I'm really trying to think. I don't know. Anxiety was just like a really cool character. Like I don't surprised me because I thought all the new characters were like comic reliefs essentially. I did not know Anxiety was going to be the antagonist essentially, but she pulled it off very well. I think that's all I have to say to basically Inside Out 2. Like I would say if you like Inside Out 1, go watch Inside Out 2. You will probably like Inside Out 2 as well. It's the most natural continuation of a movie. Like as I say, I like no sequel has felt more continued on from the first movie than Inside Out 2. That's probably not true, but that's how I felt. What else? I don't know. Is it the best movie ever? Animated movie ever? No, I don't think so. I still think Last Wish is better. I feel like the only like difference really is that sort of like level of there's like a certain je ne sais quoi, certain like polish in Last Wish, which really pushes it over the edge. But yeah, it's just like a lot of fun animations, I suppose, in there. Like I had like this imagination sequence of like this like papercraft, I suppose, animation came out. I'm trying to think what else happened, which I wanted to talk about. I'm not sure. The character design was really fun as well. Like Anxiety basically looks like she's like a frazzled, like exploding head, kind of. Just like the tense moments of it all being bottled up would be like well, her like eye head shape, and then just like her hair exploding up out the top. And she's got like a very sort of like orderly, organized outfit. Envy's just has like these big like doughy eyes, I suppose. Because she's got like her eyes are bigger than like a. Was it? I guess you usually say mouth, but it doesn't apply in this case. Her eyes are just huge because she wants whatever. Embarrassment, of course, her big nose, so you can't like see the mouth because he doesn't want to talk, and it's much easier to see the blush, I suppose. A hoodie design as well. Ennui, very funny, just like can't even stand up straight. She just like is constantly like bent over, like looking at her phone, presumably. And Nostalgia was just like adorable. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say about it. I guess not. So, on that note, I guess I'll round off. Inside Out 2, worth a watch? Yeah, I'd say so. But probably the best Pixar movie that's come out for a while. But on that note, if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.